training laws, a copy of which is on the wall back there if anybody has any questions. Thank you, appreciate it. And we will start with the budget for district court.
And I'll give a little lead in. In the current year, district court has their latest approved budget is $3,662,000. As of the latest date in Oracle, with 82% of the year done, district court has is 83.7% spent, which equates to about a $65,000 negative variance. I mean, Doug has spoke to me about the potential for a supplement for district court. Maybe today he'll talk to that a little too and see if he still thinks he's going to need that supplement. But on the other side, on revenue, they're projected to generate about $975,000 in revenue, and to date they received about 90% of that, so they're actually running a $75,000 positive variance on the revenue side. So that's where we are year to date on this year's budget. And the requested budget that they've submitted is for $3,774,000, which represents a 3.1% increase over the latest approved budget. And again, I'll let Doug speak into the drivers for that increase. And with that, I'll turn it over to Doug.
Good afternoon, Doug.
All right, thank you. I'm going to hand out a little narrative. There's much called this one with the green number in the middle. I worked off of this sheet basically through our budget committee. District judges have a handful of judges that approve it. Then I go to the full page. So basically, Joe is correct. We have Joe have the sheet, the green mark on the center with the. Basically, this is the narrative, and what we're requesting for fiscal year 14 next year is $3.77 million. And that would be an increase of $112,000 from the current fiscal year we're living in. And you can see at the top the what was requested last year and what was adopted was like $100,000 cut, represents $98,000. So because Joe had put like $1,200 back in. So basically, if you look at what we asked for last year versus what we're asking for this year, it's a $13,000 increase. And if you break that $112,000 down, it's those four categories that are depicted there. The payroll is $31,000 because the 2% pay raise was already approved last January, so we have to absorb that, and that's even saving about $8,000-9,000 because of attrition and different folks coming in at lower salaries than projected. And the other two, since we were cut the $100,000 last year, I took $50,000 each out of the indigent defense and the jury area. So we're requesting to throw $25,000 back at each one of those to kind of get us back to where we think we should be. And then they're requesting a fifth law clerk, the new law clerk for 9 months of the year starting this fall for $30,000. So those are the four categories that are represented in the increase. If you go down below there, my estimated supplemental for this fiscal year will be about $100,000. When I did this about a month ago, it's looking like the Joe said 65. We're running a little less than projected in the last month. One note is that $30,000 that we've expended in this fiscal year was budgeted for a JAG grant that we're going to use next year. So that money was expended that we'll have to recoup somehow in the scheme of things. So I don't know if you're counting that, Joe, in your calculations. And if you go down below the historical budget, so I'm looking at most notably, if you look at fiscal year 2011, there was a decrease of $153,000. We came back and got a $200,000 supplemental, which we spent $121,000 of that. So we returned $80,000 or $79,000 of the unspent. And then last year, for 2012, we came back for $100,000, spent $91,000 of that. So this year we're looking at another deficit of $50,000 to $100,000 at least. So I don't know what the final tally is going to be. So that's kind of why we're looking at the numbers up above to to get us to where we believe would be, we're not coming back for a fourth year, consecutive year for a supplemental budget. And of course, I've handed out these charts, which I've said in the past years. You look at the jury, there's a jury chart and an indigent defense chart. Those are two moving targets. You look at it, those are the two big unknowns I have in the budget. If you look at this year, I think the jury budget is looking at $60,000 over. We're gonna project to spend over it, and the indigent defense is kind of right on the mark right now, so that's one of the reasons why we're going into the red ink. Then the final chart there shows you the revenue picture. If you wanna go back to jury comparison, the last 5 years are depicted here. You've got, you look at the last column on the right, that's fiscal year 2013. There's $299,000 adopted in that category. We've already spent $273, and our projections at the very bottom there are $364. So I think that's not going to be quite as bad, because May and June are slower jury months, but you never know. And if you go to the next chart, the indigent defense chart, same thing there. We're looking at a projection for this fiscal year. We adopted 715, and we're projecting 693. So we're a little under there. But I'm looking at a couple big bills hanging out there with the, I guess, the Brazilian murder trial case that there's some bills from one of the attorneys still coming in on that. And then the revenue on the last page there, kind of, you can self-explanatory. The Carrying Act has really been juiced up the last few years, which is kind of nice. That's provided the county some good revenue the last few years. And of course, the drug court is fully funded. They give us $400,000 to pay for the staffing and the salaries. And then the referee area there is another $300-some thousand. So almost $1 million in revenue that comes in. Other than that, I've also got here some stats here, just some jury trial activity just this year. You can look at, we've had like 31 trials just from calendar year 2012, and I think there's 7, 8 murder one trials that went on last year. So business is good over there when it comes to some of those things. The other thing you asked for is the organizational chart. That's this chart that's floating around. If you have any questions with the structure, that's the number of people in the district court that are covered under this budget. Keep in mind the judges and the court reporters are not paid out of this. They're state-funded positions. But, and the state also pays for the computers and the printers through that justice agreement a few years back. But other than that, the other employees are all county funded in this organizational chart. And then finally, I'm going to hand this out here. We asked for the salaries of everybody. Here's that coming around. So that is kind of the budget request in a nutshell. Do you have any questions?
Commissioner Boyle.
Doug, do you use the .com exclusively in your computer work?
Yes.
Okay.
With the except, I mean, there's some legal research, there's Westlaw, some contract stuff for that, but they do all of our, they're our IT provider with the state and maintain all the email systems and our justice system. There's some agreements between the state and I think the county with some of the work that's provided.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Do you get your computers through Justice though?
The state, we're on a 3-year lease program with the state, so they are on the hook to buy and replace the computers for all the employees.
Okay.
The one thing that we do is the state buys the printers for the bailiffs. It's kind of a multi-use unit. They buy them, and I provide the maintenance on them because it does more than printing. They also do scanning. We're trying to get the bailiffs and the judges to do more scanning and sending out orders, so we're not running up our own paper, those types of things. So we're on a kind of a project to do that. The state's been very, very willing to pay for the equipment. So we replace about a fourth of them every year, so we're kind of on a rotation schedule more. We're not doing it, all 16 every year.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Any further questions for them? Joe.
I guess, Doug, the point you're making is if you look at it last year, you requested the 3.76, and we cut you back 100,000, and now you're coming back probably for $100,000 supplement. So what you're saying is, you know, your budget was basically this, your costs were the same, that 3.7, and if we give you the $100,000 supplement and approve next year's budget, it's essentially then meeting the requirement of being flat, right? That if you add the 100,000 that we could potentially give you as a supplement, and then compare it to your next year's request, it's essentially flat,
Yes.
which was the guideline.
Well, yeah, and part of it, of course, the excuse me, the payroll is not included in there, so that's, you know, a third of it's the 2% that's been approved. So yeah, it's like I say, those two areas, jury and indigent defense, you just never know what. If you go back to that chart, that can spike to the jury not so bad, but the other areas that can go up to 200, 300,000 over the mark if you had a bad year. But on averages, we're close to where we should be.
And, you know, I guess in these couple of years we've cut you and you've been coming for supplements this time of year. So how confident are you with this budget that you're requesting, that if the requested budget becomes the approved budget, that a year from now you won't be back for a supplement?
How confident? I'll do a 50-50. I think that I'll probably be back if you do this, because I just think that those years that we carved out so much in the past 4 or 5 years ago, it just hasn't gotten to the pace we need to. To be honest with you, I don't think it's enough.
I wanted to ask, and maybe this is for Mr. Friend, but if it is, he'll answer, I hope. It's my understanding that we have to pay, Douglas County has to pay a filing fee when we file charges, and I'm looking at these 31 trials that you listed here. We pay a filing fee that goes to the state of Nebraska, is that correct?
County attorney pays for the criminals, right, and the county pays for all informal papyruses.
Okay.
I mean, my office pays for those.
Okay, so what do you have a figure
But
that's
it's
kind of...
not 82, it's like 35, like $43 a case, I think.
Those are just the jury cases that went to a jury trial.
Right,
Just jury trial.
right.
But you're talking, how many criminal cases are filed a year?
25% of my caseload, which is 15 to 16,000, 4,000, 4,500 a year. That Don Klein's got a budget for and pay,
Right. So I maybe this is something
not
that...
counting juvenile court.
The point is that we're paying a lot of money to the state of Nebraska to file charges against people who are accused of violating state laws. Isn't that correct? I mean, and I know it's judges' retirement and all those things, which are pretty touchy deals to get into, but it's pretty much off the wall that, you know, taxpayers have to pay a filing fee to, you know, charge people with committing crimes.
I think Nebraska is one of the few states, if not the only state in the union, where that's allowed.
It does that. I mean, and the figures, not a small figure. Anybody have a ballpark? I don't want to. I know it's probably it's a hard figure in Don Klein's, I suppose, in his
Well,
office.
if we do 4,500 criminal,
$1,000.
and then we do, and then we do, that's 45 times, say $45. So you're talking several thousand a month that he's got a budget for that, and then I pay for all the informal paupers that come in. The judge signs a
Yeah.
thing saying you're destitute and you don't have to pay.
Yeah.
That $82 still comes in. We pay the state the 45, or the 34, or whatever it is.
So you said a
35
figure.
and then some change.
Did you say a ballpark figure? I don't want to hold you to it, but
That'd be $250,000 between everybody, at least. Yeah, it's just
Probably.
the filing fees that we pay. I mean, not like the juvenile court. What do you? That's another
We have about 2,700 cases filed a year in juvenile court, and
$2.5 million.
I think most of those are indigent.
so what are we talking about? $500,000?
Well, we could get some. We're just throwing numbers.
Ballpark,
out.
yeah. Well, I guess you know the thing is that this is something that's really bothered me for years, and it seems like, you know, it seems like we ought to be able to appeal to someone in Lincoln in the legislature that, you know, this is really outrageous, and not outrageous maybe, but it's a little bit over the top that we have to pay to do this, and so we'll pursue that. And maybe that could free up some money, because you shouldn't have to be coming in here and asking for a supplement, cutting your budget back, and coming in for a supplement, cutting your budget back. I mean, these are expenses that you have, and you know, we have to live with them, and so do you. So I think it's, as Commissioner Kraft says, it's truth in budgeting, you know. So we just need to come to grips with funding, the operations, and we need to find a way to do it. And I think this is one way that we might be able to, hopefully we could get that done, maybe sometime. So I think we'll talk about pursuing that.
Commissioner Morrison.
What's the increase in the law library and decrease, why is there a decrease in the funding for it from 55 to 40?
In the revenue section, that's, we overestimated last year the revenue that's coming out on the copier and the bar dues, or the dues that used to pay. Years ago, that would bring in about $75,000-$80,000 from, back before the county was bad, and when attorneys firms were actually, contributing to the library, and that pendulum has swung the other direction in the last, 5-6 years. They're just not, the revenue's not there anymore. We're not, they're not required to pay this, and we've talked about sending out solicitation letters, but it just seems that it just hasn't, the revenue hasn't kept pace with what it historically was.
It seems to getting worse than better. And I know when we had this discussion last year, we kind of said conceptually this thing should be self-funding, and we threw around some different ideas how to make it so. And now you look at this year's budget, and it's actually gotten worse, not better, on that point.
Well, that's part of the, it's changed in the area of the conciliation court's gone up because of some certain changes, but I guess it's just the evolution of, I don't know that you can put the burden on the library on the private bar. I mean, it seems that's where it was, it changed. I mean, things changed over time, and from 2005 to 2013, just the revenue's not coming in from where it used to.
Well, and that's where, instead of just an automatic requesting an increase, I think we need to talk about maybe we should only have it open for 3 days a week versus 5 days a week. Maybe we have it open
2 days.
I mean, whatever. I would ask that we take a look at that in terms of putting the numbers together for it. And then we won't have to rely on or accuse the bar of not supporting it.
No, we went through this, before when, before they named it the Amdor Library and all this was gone on. There was a big battle years ago that didn't play out very well on this type of thing. So, I'd strongly discourage you to do anything to library closing hours or anything. I think when you look at, it's two different things. You're looking at the operations of the library versus the revenue it brings in. By reducing the hours, you're not going to bring in more revenue.
Well,
You're
not
not
pay the
maybe not
increase in cost either.
pay somebody a day or two, but the public's going to sacrifice it. It's there for the public to come.
Is it really for the public, or is it the law firms that are using it?
It's for both. And that's just it. It's changed. I mean, nowadays with the legal research that's online and the Westlaws, the old books are not what they used to be. I mean, it's changed. The pendulum has changed from how lawyers do things and what they did 10 years ago.
Commissioner Boyle.
Well, I saw this movie before. What happened was I was the one who proposed closing it, and there was a guy named Mike Amdor who hit my face on the floor a couple times, and we argued quite a bit about it. And the facts are that the judges use the law library extensively. They come down and do research, and they do use the books. Even the younger judges. I mean, the older ones. Back then, I don't know when it was, 10 years ago when this fight was on. And then lawyers, occasionally I would go in and use the books, and people around this table know that I do not use a computer when I do research. I do a little bit better now, but I use law books to look up cases and prepare things. So anyway, and the public they do go in and look up things they need to look up, and the librarians help them do that. And the reason that the funding dropped was that some of the law firms in town were solicited, and it was the Save the Library kind of letter that went out. And so they kicked in $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, McGrath North, and a few of the other big ones. And so that's why the revenue was up. And of course, now the library is named after Mike Amdor, and the pressure's off to sustain it. And so the funding's dropped $15,000, $20,000, whatever it is. And so that's the deal. And I don't think, I'm almost certain that these law firms around here do not use that law library, that it's the judges, it's the people off the street, people who are coming in to, file something against her ex-husband or whatever it is, whoever it is, it's someone who's looking for something that needs information about how to file against a landlord. That's what's going on. And people do need access to this, so they have access. The law is the last vestige of civilization for people. That's where you settle these disputes, hopefully. So it has to be open to the public. It really does. And in the scheme of things, this is not a big item. It's got to be kept open.
And part of it too is that I think that the other trend is there's more pro se people that are representing themselves, sitting a day out, and they're wasting more time with judges.
Almost half
And the
now.
self-help center down there that's open 3 days a week has been a great deal. So, and that's part of the problem is you got these people that come in and have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
They're wasting judges' times and they're wasting clerks' time. And it becomes,
Well, the other thing, really, people do have to have access. It's just not, you can't just say in our society that they can't have access to what the law is, for God's sake.
Commissioner Borgeson.
Well, again, I guess I'll be the next. I'm just looking, again, I think we have to put a little bit, a thinking cap on here in terms of, it may be a small amount, but it's one of those, instead of just an automatic come back and ask the county board for either a supplemental or more money for the next budget, where in this budget or anybody's budget are we looking at reducing the cost? I bring that up only because it's been brought up in the past. It's not something, again, I'm going to use that awful word, mandated. We had, I thought, a good fix on helping with those costs. It's going south, and so we need to rethink it.
or you say going south, what do you mean by that?
Financially.
Well, you just said the revenue that was brought in by the attorneys isn't there. It's dropping.
But the cost of the library hasn't changed. The cost of the operation has stayed consistent.
But if we're getting
It,
funded less, that means net the county is paying more. The revenues, and it's two sides. You gotta look at revenues and
Is the
expense.
point. Your revenue's revenue. It doesn't go back to fund that anyways.
Yeah, it goes
You
back to the
gotta-
money's fungible. So it goes back, and so if you look at it, if we get 15,000 more for that, that's 15,000
Oh, yeah.
less that the county has to fund you for. So I disagree with you that I think you have to look at both revenues and expenses.
Well,
I
absolutely,
certainly do.
But you can't just because the revenue's been there before, it's going to be there 10 years from now. You can't use that as your benchmark.
I can use my benchmark as saying it should have been more than what it is today. So,
Well, sure you could.
it's not. So,
Well, it's
again,
not.
you're.
And I'm living with reality. It is not there. I can't find the money.
I'm
Parties understand
not-
how I'm doing it.
I'm not here to get into a pissing contest with
You're
you.
the one who said it's gone south. And
What
hasn't gone south.
it
The
has
numbers
gone
have stayed the
south.
same.
Our revenue isn't the same of what we collected a few years ago to operate the law library. So what
And the-
I'm asking, instead of if there's no revenue that's coming in, then maybe we need to look at something a little different in how we're operating it. That's the only point I wanted to make. Obviously, that didn't sit well with you, and I'm sorry about that. I'm throwing things out to try to reduce the cost of our budgets here. That's it. Just a conversation piece, not an argument piece.
I'm telling you what my philosophy is on it.
If the
Well, I'm telling you mine.
All right.
Reduce your
revenue
spending.
Disagree.
If the revenue's down, going back to what Commissioner Borgeson said, what happens if we say, hey, it's going to be open 2 days, and they plan that schedule, and that saves us some money? Would that be possible?
Anything's possible. I would
I mean,
discourage
then you
that,
can
but
tell me
you have
the
to look at
negatives
so
of
you got to
that.
look at the cost of the library. The books are still going to be that you're paying for. So the books that you paid for on the shelves are not going to be accessible. The staffing in that area is very minimal, so you're going to have books you've bought and paid for that are sitting collecting dust instead of being used by the public. So if you want to make that decision, that's, to me, not a very wise decision.
Well, listen,
So to answer your question,
I need
no, I
to
don't.
tell you the truth. Doug is absolutely right on this because we went through this thing. This is absolutely the same thing that happened years ago when we talked about closing it, because the books have to be bought for the library, so that you pay for the books, which is what the budget's going for, that and the salary of the librarian. So you buy the books, you put them on the shelves, and you pay for the books, but then you close the doors and only have it open for 2 days a week. Well, you're paying for the books. That's the cost. So the books are on the shelves, the computers are there, you're paying for the computers, but you close the doors thinking you're saving money. You're not, because you got all the books you had to buy, and you had to pay for the computers. Well, if you don't buy the books, then you don't have the library.
There you go.
Well, if you don't have the library, then you're shutting down access to people who need the books, like the judges, and you also have people who come in who are indigent, who need and have a right to access the law, Marianne. This is frankly, it's a very high constitutional right. This is not something to be treated very lightly. People have to have access to legal knowledge. I mean, even people in prison, for God's sake, have access to the law. I mean, it's a serious matter. Now, the reason the money fell was because we did this a number of years ago, and the law firms got a letter saying, hey, we're going to close the library over here. And so they popped up with some money. We can write another letter to the lawyers and say, hey, we need money. We can try it again. I'd be willing to do that.
Have
So-
we-
We got a long line of people.
Chris, you wanted to say something.
I mean, what's the cost in it? Or the cost in this book, replenishing the book?
I know the budget's 112,000. I don't know how that breaks out between books and subscriptions and how much is labor.
Well, I'm just saying, buy a computer, make it all digital, donate the books, and have somebody there to help, because that's basically what they do in prison. They don't have a law library in prison.
We're talking about $15,000 here. If you look at the budget, $15,000 is what we're bantering about here.
No, I'm with you in regards to access. I'm just trying to understand. Okay, tell me what the cost is, because if the cost is in the books, and that's what I don't understand. If it's access, yeah, you need a person. But if the cost is in the books, get out the book business, donate the books, get it all digital, because in prison they do it digital, and you ain't got to worry about that cost, and you just subscribe it to a fee. I mean, that one would get you reducing the long-term trajectory of it, because if we were still buying books, then that business is going to be going a little bit.
I think you make a point. If I could speak, Doug, let's look into digitalizing.
Right now in in the library, there's only $12,000, and that's for the part-time person that works there, is coded there. So I know Ann is in that area too, that's not coded there, but she's in the we call it under the legal research area. So it's a it's where you code things. So it would be, although the budget's $111,000, $95,000 of that is for books and publications.
Maybe we do what he's saying. Let's take a look and get out of the book business. Go to Westlaw or something.
There's a number of people that would like to speak to this, even including me if it drags on long enough. But Laura had her hand up first.
I don't know how many of you have ever had to be pro se in court, but I have. And I've spent a significant amount of time, not only in our law library here in this building, but also in the Creighton Law Library. And what I would tell you is there are outdated resources in the current law library. I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson. I've encountered people who are attempting to actually make the types of filings that you were talking about, Mr. Boyle, who don't know what to do, don't have money to hire a lawyer. We don't even have some of the current books that relate to the juvenile law in our current existing law facility. What I would tell you, which I've told other fellow citizens when I interact with them in this law library in this building, if you are asking for my advice, not as a lawyer, as a citizen, I would go over to Creighton Law Library, which is open, actually longer than the law library here in this facility. And I don't understand why we wouldn't just completely close the law library in this building and just have some type of a reciprocity agreement or something so that you could utilize the law library at Creighton, which is extensive. You can utilize anything online. The law librarians there are exceptionally helpful, I know, because they help me. There are more up-to-date books. There's everything you need, and it's free. And you could cut $12,000. And I guess what I would say is, just this morning, Commissioner Boyle, I heard you talking about $500 toner cartridges. I think $12,000 is relevant, and it doesn't seem like it's just $12,000. So this seems to me as a workable solution. And that way people can go, if judges want to go to use the law library, I could walk to Creighton Law Library in 10 minutes. 15 in heels.
Thank you. Commissioner Kraft.
I totally forgot what I was going to say.
It's been a while.
It's been quite a while, yes.
A couple of quick comments on the law library. It has downsized physically a few years back as a result of more computers, less books. I mean, as more of the information becomes digitalized, that's why the library voluntarily shrunk in size to where they are today. So I think they are being, yes, it's not mandated. The irony is it is mandated that we provide a law library in the jail. It is not mandated that we provide a law library in the busiest courthouse in the state of Nebraska. I have always taken the attitude that if we can try to keep it cost effective, that it is appropriate that we should have a law library here for the increasing number of people that are doing their own work.
And I remember now. In the 111,000 for the law library, does that include the West Law?
No.
No, it does not.
I'm sorry, what was the question, Mark?
Did that include the West Law?
Further questions? Or
Yes, it does for the public. There's another that the employees have, so yes, there is an access for the public to get Westlaw.
Because that $67,000 is a separate expense.
That's for the court, that's for the public defender, county attorney.
And so do the judges have access to that Westlaw then?
May I ask how much is that West Law for the library?
That's for that books and publications. I have to look at that to see what's.
But it's probably significant.
And part of this too is that we get legal aid donated computers down there, and some of the equipment down there is donated by other players that have a role in helping out the poor in this community.
And even if some of the data is outdated a year or two or three, most of it's still relevant to the case that might be taken place today.
Well, I'd have to talk, I guess, this department's comments, or, I guess, that's news to me, because we have a library that keeps things up, and again, when you have a limited budget, you have to decide which ones you can update, which ones you can't, so, if we had and that's part of the deal, you gotta prioritize which publications you wanna update, which ones you don't wanna update, and obviously with limited resources, you have to.
If you were to close it, people who do their own research, would probably be wasting more time of judges and juries and.
Well, I think so. I don't know. I mean, historically, I wasn't here, I think, when the first battle went on with the closing library. It was before my time in Douglas County, so it was, I think Commissioner Boyle knows the history of that. But yeah, I would tend to agree that right now, if you did that, it would create way more burden on the staff and the resources that would be exhausted than to have that there. And not only that, if you come downtown and want to get something done, get a landlord-tenant form. Library, I come down here now, they're only open on Wednesdays. I came down on Tuesday. Now I gotta make another trip. So, I mean, we have that with the self-help center being open 3 times a week for people just missed the wrong day, and they're not knowledgeable to know what days these things are open or closed. But I would tend to think that it's maybe spend some time in there. Go spend a half a day in the library and see who comes in there. I mean, that would be part of it. See and visit with some attorneys who are there, people that use these libraries. I think it's a very valuable resource, but
what if
it's all your decision.
I'm sure you probably looked at this way back when, but a large law firm in town, the opportunity to put their name on that law library, at least in conjunction with Mike's name. I know how touchy it would be to take Mike's name off there. I'm not suggesting that, but if you had the McGrath North, Michael Amdor Law Library, something like that. So every time somebody comes in there, that's advertising. It's cheap advertising. You looked into that, I'm assuming.
Sponsorship.
Yeah.
We talked
I think the judges were in a competent position to start going on soliciting money from law firms that the attorneys are going to be practicing in front of. So they think it's a whole total conflict of interest for the court to be involved in that activity. It just doesn't pass the smell test. Makes sense, but I don't think judges want to go down that road.
Going back to what Chris said, we're spending $67,000 to have it on the computer system, online.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, you need to give them access, but the book business is, get out.
Well, we are. This is the reason why that $67,000. That's changing too, because the county attorney, the public defender, and the resources that have changed over the years to where you've got to pay more for the online resources that are being replaced from the books. And that's the natural evolution, that they're getting rid of the books that you paid for, but you got to pay for the online services that are now being provided through Westlaw. That $67,000 provides legal resources for 40 county attorneys, probably 50 if you had the civil people in there, another 40 in the public defender's office. It does the judges, the law clerks that do all the work for the judges. In the $67,000 gives a and that's a government rate, discounted rate. It's a great deal for what you're getting out of it.
Can I make a suggestion that we do a couple things? This is taking a lot of time. Could I suggest that we do, as Chris suggested, that take a look at using computers in place of those books, and somebody, I don't know who, maybe Doug, maybe somebody else, would look at what would happen if we got rid of the books and use that money to use Westlaw off this government rate, and then also maybe taking a look at the self-help operation, expanding that to 5 days a week, 8 to 5 or whatever it is, and so that it would take the place in a lot of ways for consumers to have access to the law. I'd like to see us look at that and then get on to other business. Then we have, how do we do this? Who could do that, Joe? Joe, who could do that?
Doesn't sound like a finance thing.
What do you think? Doesn't sound like finance? Patrick, who could do that?
I mean, I'm happy to coordinate it with, just to see
Okay.
I'll talk to Doug about the two things, the software and the self-help desk.
Okay, looks like one of your persons over there against the wall is smiling broadly.
Oh, one of you raised your hand, is that right?
I think she raised her hand.
Well, certainly, yeah.
Good. Okay, great.
And I believe
Thanks.
there are usage reports on the Westlaw that on that 67,000 of who's using it, what, when, and how. So there are reports that you can get off there to
Sorry, I brought it up.
find out what's the activities on there.
Yes, sir.
I want to agree with Commissioner Rogers. In my past life, I printed and bound law review books, and they're going to digital. And through Westlaw, you can get probably more updated information, but that's where it's going right now.
Okay.
Slowly but surely. I got one more question on the total personal services here. You're up 3.5% over last year. That's what you requested. And that included a 2% pay raises, right? Where's the rest of the money? Why is that up more than 2% pay raise?
50,000 for 25 for juries, increase of the jury area, and 25,000 in the unit defense. So there's 50,000 more, and then there's that other law clerk position that's in there. So that's where the 3% comes up.
You're adding one more person
Yes.
to payroll?
Yes.
And is that in the regular payroll?
There only is one payroll.
Well, there's part-time and seasonal.
Well, it all comes out of the same pot of money. I mean, I don't know. Who are you, by the way? I don't know who you
Well,
are.
my name's Harvey Sankey. I'm with Nebraska Taxpayers for Freedom.
Nice to meet you.
And how are you?
Yeah, it would be, I guess, comes out of the, I guess I'm not familiar with the different terminology, but it would come out of the, our payroll is payroll. I guess I don't just differentiate between, depends how many hours people work, but this would be a full-time position that's requested, correct?
For 30,000.
But that's for 9 months of it. The following year would be more, because you gotta add the, you're gonna have a 12-month person there. Correct.
Thank you. Further questions or comments?
I just have
For
one
Mr.
question
Johnson.
about your JAG grant. You said that you got a grant and then you didn't use it for whatever it was achieved for, is that right?
Yes.
And what was the purpose of the grant? But you spent the money. Is that, I think I followed what you're saying. Maybe you could talk more about that. I really appreciate it.
Right. The 2012. What, 12? I got the grant. 11. 11 in 2000. Well, anyways, we got a grant, and these grants are, the JAGs are block grants. The JAGs are block grants, but you can get the money, and you have a 4-year window to spend the money. So we got a $30,000 project to update courtroom 16. Judge Randall wants to deck out that courtroom into a technology courtroom because we don't have that in this facility. So the money was awarded to this grant, so it was put in the budget in fiscal year 2013, the year we're living in. The money is being spent in other areas, because our budget, you can rob Peter to pay Paul. We don't have a, object codes, if you take this, take this. And next year, and the reason we postponed that project is the .com in the county is doing a wireless project in the whole courthouse. There's a project on that's gonna be provide wireless everywhere. So we thought it was best to delay this project until that was completed, so we didn't double our costs on what the .com project is gonna provide versus what we're trying to provide in this courtroom. So that's why we anticipate spending that $30,000 in the next fiscal year, so that's gotta offset that was spent in this fiscal year.
So you spend the 30,000 to update the courtroom eventually, is what you're saying?
It's gonna
or
be
no?
next year, yeah. The plan is to do it in the next 12 months, starting in fiscal year 2014.
Okay, and the money went just to pay the bills.
Yes.
Joe?
Yeah, Doug, just to clarify, .com's implementing the project, but that's really a county-funded project.
Understand, that's
The wireless.
right. But what we're getting at is that we were gonna do some similar types of things in this grant. So instead of us going and doing it, we're gonna
Right.
wait for them to do it
Right,
and not
right.
do it.
We decided not to do it in a piecemeal manner, to do a consolidated approach for it.
Marty or Doug had a question, they had their hand up a while back. Do you still have the question? Okay.
Further questions concerning district court budget?
If you have any questions, let me know.
So tell me what we're doing in the library, just so I.
We're going to look at software, the possibility of expanding the Westlaw, LexisNexis, whatever other software services, and then look at that self-help area to see if that could be expanded to 5 days a week.
Oh, although isn't that staffed by volunteers?
I don't know
It's
anything
all
about
volunteer.
it.
They're all
We don't spend a
volunteers
dime
in
on
there.
it. The only thing we bought
Right.
was computers and 2 desks to sit in there. That's
Yep.
it.
So
Right.
it's volunteers that run the library?
No, that
You would
run
have to
the
get
self-help.
with, you'd have to get Creighton Law School and the, what is it, Omaha Bar Association to fill that 40 hours a week, and so that'd be up to them to do that.
This is the little triangle room down
Oh,
there that
okay.
you go by.
Right now, it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 10 to 2.
And the state bar has a commitment to that too. They also have a staff person that's here.
Yeah.
And that's, it's only open 12 hours a week.
I know in other areas of county government, we're trying to get people to be electronic with the treasurer's office, so on. To me, if it's closed 3 days a week, I don't see it as a big deal. It converts to the other people look and find out when things are open.
The only trick to the Westlaw issue is it does take some training, and if you are indigent, you may or may not have,
Okay.
any clue how to use it, and so that would just mean more supports to help them when they come into the law library, I would assume.
Let alone how to use it.
And I think Lori's
Yeah.
suggestion on the Creighton Library is a good one. I mean, it's probably way more updated.
It's a pretty nice law library.
Yeah.
I have to I'm sorry, but I actually am down in that library and I'm interacting with people who are trying to use the library, who have less education than I do. If you can't use Westlaw, there's no way you'll be able to understand the material in the book to know what to do.
Okay.
And there's more help at the law library at Creighton.
Well, if we're trying to not have a supplement, we need to do everything we can, or we'll be back and have a supplement again next year.
50% chance. That's what he said.
I think you misunderstood that. What you were asking him was, if you take that supplement you just gave him and okay the budget at 3.77 million, you said there's still a 50% chance
Right.
you'd be up here?
Right. Yes.
I think this will be the third year, I don't see why it wouldn't be 4.
Yeah.
That's keeping all things constant.
Okay. Further questions or comments? Well, that was easy.
All right, thank you.
Good luck, Doug. Thanks.
In this budget figure that they submitted, it also does incorporate and include the cost of 2 additional staff members, which assumes that new juvenile judge will be in place for the next fiscal year. Okay, I'll turn it over to Ray.
to that. Yeah, we're setting a flat budget that does include the 2 additional staff members if the new judgeship is created and funded. That also projects a target start date of October 1st of this year. So that would be funding 2 positions for a period of 9 months. Okay. This has been on the state's radar for a number of years now. It seems to go past this Judicial Resources Commission annually for the past several years, and it gets to the state level and sometimes sputters. There is talk that this year is the year where 6th judgeship would be created.
I think we're kind of all moving with the assumption that it is coming this year.
Yeah. The reason we were able to still function within a flat budget amount, even with the additional creation of 2 new positions, there have been some huge decreases in our out-of-home placement costs over the past several years. We went from the high water mark of $2.3 million 3 years ago. We're down to last year we're at $410,000, and expect to be even less this year.
I thought we were over $3 million one year, but in any event,
that might have been a decade ago, right?
Wasn't that long ago? We were at 3.2 not that long ago. So in any event, this is all great news. There's not many things in the county budget heading in that direction.
And a lot of that is attributed to some bills that were passed last year with shifting funds from OGS and HHS to probation, and that's where the out-of-home placements have been going down. Interesting to note that there was supposed to be a study from last year worth $250,000 at the state level to make sure that this pilot project, which is going on here in Douglas County and a couple of counties out west, they wanted to make sure that it was going well. Apparently, they were going to jump in the gun. They're not waiting for that report to come in, and they're going to spread this statewide at the end of the session.
Really?
Yeah, it'll raise a red flag to me. They were going to spend $250,000 on this report, and there's no report yet.
But they're going forward anyway.
But they're going forward anyway.
Wow. Okay.
Also, we got some stuff going on here. There has been a big decrease too in the youth center census over the past several years. There was, I think, Brad Alexander spoke to that this morning at the budget meeting, or at his meeting. The high water mark was at 217 people in July of 2007. Right now they're at 91, which includes 65 secure and 26 staff secure. So those numbers have steadily been coming down. Their capacity is 144. We're also working on implementing a new calendaring system across the bench, where it's a staggered approach where certain judges will hear dependency neglect cases on Mondays and Tuesdays, and on Thursdays and Fridays they would hear delinquency status cases, and they would switch for the other half of the judges. Wednesdays would be an open day where you could hear a combination of cases. And there's also some time built in for motion hearings, motion time set aside a couple times a week, which a big complaint from the practicing bar right now is if they really want something in court, it can take 2 or 3 or 4 months to get that hearing set. Now we're trying to build in a system where you can hopefully not wait for more than a week or 2 to get that the case in. We've also got new court rules that we're submitting those to the Supreme Court hopefully later this week, with the aim on efficiency, trying to quicken the time from filing to meaningful court events, particularly pre-trials. Pre-trials right now are they're formally set. Attorneys show up in the pre-trials and just say, set the case, set it for trial, let's move on. And then we have to look for docket time 2, 3, 4 months down the road. And in that time frame, a lot of the cases are settling. However, they settle just like most cases do at the courtroom steps, maybe a day or 2 in advance. Well, for notice requirements, you have to give everyone at least 72 hours notice to schedule a court hearing. If it falls within that 72-hour window, we have wasted court time. So this is hopefully will severely prevent that from happening. Also, we have the new judgeship. This is based upon judicial workload, and it's been recognized for a number of years now. There's a Nebraska Judicial Resources Commission, which reviews this data and makes recommendations to the legislative branch of government. these are numbers are pillars of our society, and they're a combination of also judges and attorneys, as well as private business members on that commission. And they had unanimously decided or presented that to move forward for a sixth judge. Also, the Nebraska State Bar Association has created a new juvenile law section so that any juvenile bill would pass through for comments and review from those who actually practice law in juvenile court. This was a big concern, yes, for a lot of people, including myself, where I would get a phone call from a legislative aide on a Wednesday saying, please review this legislative bill and provide your comments. I said, okay, when would you like the comments? Well, it's going from committee tomorrow. I open up the email, it's an 80-page document. So what we will sit down and take the time to read it, but this new law section is, everything will hopefully get vetted through the section. Also, we're asking that, being that there's been some severe changes, or a lot of changes in juvenile court over the past several years, rather than waiting until January, February, March to ask the juvenile court and the practitioners on how to change the law to make it better, we're asking that the state does that when they're out of session in July, August, September, when we have time to sit down, review the bills, speak with the legislative aide, speak with the attorneys and judges who practice law, and actually sit down and write a coherent bill that would hopefully get passed. Okay. Oh, final thing, we are also in the process of designing our attorney fee software. Right now, that's attorneys submit their bills via paper, and we review those and check for accuracy. With this new software system, the attorneys can submit their bills online. We can then determine, I can compare attorneys across cases, across dependency, neglect, or doing status cases, find out what the average payment is, or the average fees per attorney based upon cases. We can also even determine that within the same case, as well as in court and out of court work. So this would really open up a chance to really look at the bills in detail and make sure that no one is trying to work the system.
Thank you, Ray. Questions or Commissioner Boyle?
Ray, is all of your IT work going through the .com system?
Yes, 95% of it is. We're actually working with an outside vendor, but .com is still acting as a client manager on that project.
Is their involvement such that they control it? I mean, they're the ones who are in charge. You don't have an IT person on your staff, do you?
No, we don't. No, so does still go through .com that way. Also, this private vendor is building the software, and we worked into the contract where the source code is owned by the county, so then they turn it over to .com once it's built. So a lot of places, if you build software, they want to charge you licensing fee forever.
Right. But your hardware is through Justice? The
Hardware is through Justice, just like Doug's office and John's office are. And we're on a 3-year refresh cycle.
So .com and you are comfortable that you're in the driver's seat when you say 95% is .com and this. How was the vendor selected? Who selected him or her?
Actually through .com.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
Other questions or comments concerning juvenile court?
I got it. So Ray, is it fair to say, you have a flat budget, so how you did that is essentially the amount that out-of-home placements is going down, that's driving this positive variance, you have basically used that to fund the 2 positions and the cost of the new juvenile court judge, so that when assuming that does get implemented, we won't see incremental costs coming out of your group because of it.
Correct. Correct. And the October 1 target date is, they're just talking from the state that if it does get passed, this is a priority for the judiciary to get that judge working quickly. We are understaffed.
If we find a room for him.
So we've got a room for it right now.
And more room for me.
Space is an ongoing issue. If I may, I think Harvey had his hand up first.
Harvey Sankey, the number of employees you have here on the last page goes from 19 to 23. So you're adding 4 more new people, yet you indicated you're adding 2.
What page are you looking at?
The last page.
here. You're going from 19 employees up in the top left-hand corner.
Yeah, actually, we're going from 19 to 21. This is, I'm not sure who prepared this.
But it should say 21, not
Should say
23.
21, correct.
Okay.
That was my question.
Okay. Further questions, comments?
So are the payroll numbers wrong then? if
No,
that's from
no, I don't
day
think
to
so. I think that's just, there, somehow or another, these 2 new people got double counted is my guess how that happened. But the payroll numbers and the budget numbers will be correct. It was just a roll-up of the head count.
Go ahead, Lauren.
I just have 2 questions, Mr. Curtis. Okay, so the National Center for State Courts came and they evaluated some of the payment processes and how guardian ad litems are appointed. And they recommended implementing a judicial rotation wheel in terms of guardian ad litem appointments. What is the status of that?
They made several recommendations. That's one of them. Actually, the guardian ad litem contracts are not done through the juvenile court. That's done through another county entity.
No, individual guardian ad litem, sir.
That's not a recommendation that's made by the National Center.
I think it is, but I could send you a copy of the report, but it recommends that.
I've got a copy of the report right here. if you'd
Oh,
like to
good.
look at it.
Yeah, I think that actually it recommends a rotation wheel, and then I wondered if you could talk more about, you were speaking to the delays and how members of the bar were talking about efficiency procedures. Are those meetings open to the public?
Excuse me, what meetings?
Moving cases along, you know, they were talking about how there's problems with delays. You were talking about that, I think, earlier in your talk. There are delays, scheduling, motions.
Well, yeah, the court rules will go out for public comment, but Supreme Court.
I know, but aren't there meetings here in our own judicial district? Are those open to the public?
Those
I would
are.
like to attend those meetings, because don't attorneys come? Attorneys come to those meetings, don't they?
Which meetings are you referring to?
The ones where you make the court rules for our local judicial district.
The local court rules are made by the majority of the bench, and those are delivered to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court determines if they want to write those into a court rule or not.
Oh, there aren't meetings held?
If we could keep the
Okay.
focus on the
Sure.
budget
Sure.
for today, I would
I was
appreciate
just
that.
asking about the judicial rotation wheel because it relates to cost. So, I don't know, I mean,
Well, the judges right now do use their own wheel.
oh, but I think there's supposed to be one for all the judges.
That was a recommendation. That's there's all sorts of different practices across the United States of America.
Yeah, well, maybe, could we talk about this then, so we don't waste everybody's time, because that definitely could reduce costs. Is there a time I could come and see you to talk about it?
You can submit your request in writing.
Oh, it needs to be in writing?
Yes, it does. I've
Okay.
already determined that we're not going to no longer meet in person based
Okay.
upon your past behaviors.
Okay, well, on that note, I gotta go. I just wanted to hear your budget. So,
Okay.
have a good day, Mr. Curtis.
Further questions or comments regarding juvenile court budget? Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Ray.
Yeah, you're doing some good stuff over there. Good things happening. To be able to, I mean, you have to increase your staff here. That's not an option. But to be able to do that with a flat budget,
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
There's a lot of mechanisms in place to make that happen.
I think he does the best he can.
Good, good.
We are trying it, though. We're trying extremely
Yep,
hard.
we know it.
It shows. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
Doug's tough.
Okay,
Joe.
next is, we're gonna do clerk of the district court. A little lead-in before I turn it over to John. Year to date, 82% of the year through, they're they're 80% spent.
What?
So I'm assuming that means you guys are basically going to come in on budget with no
Yes.
need for supplement.
Absolutely will.
Did you get one that was
And
Oh, there they are. That's
Oh,
what that was.
That's mine.
Oh, that's.
Well, Clerk of the District Court, I didn't know you passed them around. I threw them on top of my stuff.
and the other thing that they did, John submitted. His budget submission was $2,824,000, which actually represents a 1.2% decrease over this year's adjusted budget of $2,860,000. So John more than met his guidelines. And with that, I'll turn it over to John to talk some specifics.
Just real brief, trying to do everything we can to try to cut costs. Every time somebody leaves, we do a job study and analyze that situation, see if we can't plug somebody else in there or stop the work altogether, move the work to a different direction. When I started, I had 60 employees. Now I have 47.
Wow.
From 60 to 47? How many years?
6.
Is that right?
take over some other departments?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
They got tough situations to deal with, but we're willing to make the tough decisions to make sure we do it the right
Well,
way. and
that's-
make
that's
sure
impressive.
everything's working the way
It
it's
is. John's, since we've met the last couple of years, you do an outstanding job, really.
I
Really
don't
do,
anticipate
John.
that I'll be coming for any additional funds. Say again, please.
I said you really do a great job.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. We
So-
tried hard.
So your request is 1.2% less than last year.
1.25.
1.25. I can't imagine that we're going to grill you too hard on that one.
No.
But yeah, we'll be doing some other stuff. I know there's supervisory people. When they leave, we'll cut those back and try to consolidate some operations. And I want to go paperless. We kill more paper than probably any office anywhere.
I'll either endorse you or condemn you, whichever helps.
I'll talk to you about that.
I'm
If you
serious.
have any suggestions to us ever, please be sure to come to one of us, all of us, whatever
I'll be
you want.
glad to.
Appreciate
Thanks,
your
John. This
work.
is really terrific.
Yeah,
You're doing a
yeah,
great
this
job.
might be pretty short and simple.
Yeah, I
You guys, my heart's
have
always
one-
racing. This is only
One
my second one.
question. Joe,
This is
go
One
ahead.
amazing.
question.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And absolutely nothing on your expense side, which I think is a fantastic job. My only question relates to your revenue assumptions. Year to date, you guys have collected $2.1 million, which is actually 128% of your projected budget. And I think we had this discussion a little bit last year too about a lot of that revenue you get is based on your child support
4D.
4D payment.
And some of that 2.1, it actually should be, around $500,000-$600,000. Well, a little bit more than that. But when I went on justice, they had to continue to do time studies and that kind of stuff. We had to do reports and then figure out what employees should look at that and what shouldn't, and how the computer should be configured. So it took them about a year and a half to be able to get us up to date on what
Right.
they owed us in the past, and then they just took a wheelbarrow and dumped like all of last year and I think the previous quarter. In this year, that's why it's way up.
So my question is, next year you have it, we budgeted 800,000, and next year your budget is 540,000, so it's going down like 260,000. Is just, do you think there's some upside to that number?
The only way that I think that we could generate more than that is to cheat. I'm not gonna,
We don't want to do that.
No.
We don't want to do that, so.
So you think that's
I think that's pretty much what you're going to see. There might be variances as far as the percentage of the time study that goes up or down a few percentage, but it's not going to be huge.
They're still trying to iron it out. So.
Right. So it might go up a little bit, might go down a little bit, but
Commissioner
Okay,
Rogers.
I don't want to delay, so we can get back on schedule. But just how does child support come to you?
we do all, starting December 21st of 2001, and prior to that, my office did all the child support. Remember all the checks, they have literally dump truckloads of checks they'd have to process for people that would pay child support. And then, I think it was Heineman was a treasurer, and he headed this big child support payment center thing as a treasurer, and they moved it all to Lincoln, and everybody pays Lincoln, the child support center, their child support payments. The only ones we take are cash and we'll take some alimony, but sometimes that goes to child support too. But we still have to track all the transactions, which is kind of a hybrid different. I don't know if I even answered your
You
question.
take a fee off the top or something?
No, no.
So you just pass
Only
through?
money we take is cash for child support payments.
Just a pass through.
Is your question, Chris, about the 4D then? Is that what you're
Yes,
asking?
how do you get money
Okay,
out of
this?
for-
Yeah, where
because
does revenue
the
source come
federal
from?
government, it's a 4D Social Security issue, so they pay us, they reimburse us for the work that we do relative to that work on child support.
The federal government does.
Yes.
If it's a federal 4D case.
Right.
Only a federal 4D case.
And they count it by how we hit those screens and how long
How
we're
many
on
screens
the
we hit,
screens.
yeah.
So it's a really complicated formula, and that's why we're saying it could go up or down. We-
Okay.
They're still trying to work the kinks out of that.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Are you available to consult?
For free.
Oh,
For a
that
fee.
drive the budget up.
Hey, thanks a lot.
We keep fringe on a fund basis, so but if you want to do it, the rule of thumb, what you should do is take a fringe benefit of 33% of payroll, 33%, and that would bring it down to the department level. But the accounting system's set up where we keep it at a fund level, and so if it's a general fund department, it won't be there. It's kept at a consolidated fund level.
Yeah, consolidated fund.
But use 33% of payroll, and that'll be a real good number.
But doesn't that in the general fund then, rather than in reference to the department?
Well, there's like 20 departments in the general fund, but people like the health center or general assistance or roads or veterans are their own separate fund, and so that's when you look at that sheet for them, it'll have its own employee benefit number. So I looked at it, and we hadn't gotten all the detail, and so if you could get that in, and then maybe Harvey can give you his email information directly, and you could send, when you put that in, you could send Harvey a copy. Thank you.
And so this was for the ability to do that.
Extra people?
Hi, staff. Yeah.
Hello.
How you doing?
First to be last and the last to be first.
I guess save the best for last.
No, I didn't say that.
Does he have one of these? Like, give him a copy just in case he doesn't have one.
So Roger, I'll just give a little lead in, and then I'll turn it over to you.
You could sit up here. You might as well.
Yeah, come on, Sue. So with 82% of the way into the year to date, the assessor's office is 83.5% spent.
What?
Means you're at like basically running a small negative variance, but nobody's called me from your group about requiring a supplement, so I'm
We're gonna
assuming
make it. We're
you
gonna
guys
make
will
it
come
go.
in. All right, which is a good thing. And then Roger kind of submitted a two-stage budget. His base submission is basically 3.2 million, which represents a 2.3% increase over this year's adjusted budget. And I'll let Roger speak to the drivers of that. And then the other, that does not include the potential for another $250,000 for mandated preliminary valuation hearings that'll start in January 2014, which have been mandated by a law in the legislature. And if you remember, the full cost of that project was $500,000. We had this discussion last year, and we funded $250,000 of it a year ago. And so now there would be this additional, the second piece or supplement, which would be another $250,000 on top of his $3.2 million base request. With that, Roger, I'll let you speak to the details.
Okay, yeah, our current budget's 3.1 million, and to keep status quo, most of our budget is personnel. About 2.9 million is personnel, and really the overrun or the increase is basically due to union contracts and step increases for personnel. I've provided I've got, I think, Joe, you might have a copy.
Yeah, I didn't hand it out to them. They have a copy of that page.
Okay.
Can
So
we
I've
have
got,
that? Can we have that?
sure. Thank. And then we have the personnel costs. Oh, I'm sorry.
Clerk needs one too.
Here, just give me some of them. I'll hand them out.
Thanks.
I've got a salary page. This is actual cost for the next 12 months by position. And that's 2.8.
So you needed one? Okay. I just had one. You guys can share.
So that's an increase of 73,000 there. If you turn to the last page, should be the last page there. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Page that says 2013-14 requested to comply with state mandates. This is our $250,000.
This page?
Addition. Last year, we asked for
Computer supplies?
additional budget of $500,000 to meet the mandate that goes into effect.
A third from the last.
Yeah, third from the last. I'm sorry.
Yes, right there.
Has the red
It looks like
250
red.
on it,
Yes.
Mike.
Okay.
Here we go.
Thanks.
And yeah, Barry, go through that bottom there, because I didn't bring my copy that I wrote on. There's a correction that needs to be on that page.
Oh, okay. As of the 250 we received last year, 204,000 of it, 245 went to personnel. We hired basically
What-
7 people. We had 2 departures. Yes, sir.
Wait a minute. Was that supposed to go to the state program?
Yes.
Did you use it for the state program?
Yes.
Oh. Okay, I misunderstood. I didn't know the state program was in effect last year.
You gave us, we asked for 500,000
We
to
gave you
prepare,
250.
I mean, you can't turn it, the switch
No.
on like this.
So
We asked for 500,000 so we'd have personnel in place,
Right.
equipment in place and everything. And what the board says is we'll give you 250,000 this year and look to give you 250,000 next year.
okay, so you said the 204, and you did start the program.
Yeah, we've started,
Okay.
we've added people.
Okay, I'm sorry. So 7 people?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I interrupted.
Correct.
Important for Doug to hear that. See, a state mandate adds the people without us deciding and no funding.
That's the legislature who did that.
Yeah, the legislature.
Senator Campbell.
Well, and when we talk about that, I mean, the question I'd ask if I were you, and I don't have an answer, is how many protests do you think you'll get? And, you know, we're averaging 5,000 for BOE, so why wouldn't we get several thousand, you know, first to come take a shot at us before they go to the BOE in June? What really where we're shafted is building permits. All our new construction is as of January 1st. So we're moving that calendar way back because we have to have values done by the statute. We gotta have values done and posted like January 15th, and then we take calls for appointments up till February 1st. Then we hear the appeals for the month of February, and then we have to send our numbers to the state March 19th. So what they've done is really taken 3 months, 2.5 months off our calendar. I mean, we're going to be looking at new construction in November and December to come up with a number for January 1st. So if we have a mild winter and we got a lot of construction going on, we're just going to be able to do the best we can with that. So then, with hearing a number of protests, now this should help Board of Equalization out in June, hopefully. I mean, the no-brainers we can get out of the way. Somebody comes in and says, I bought the house for $200,000, Morsi, idiot, you got it assessed at $225,000. You know, it was on the market for 100 days and through a real estate company. And here's my appraisal. Those ought to be pretty easy. Then we can get the number corrected, and then they don't have to come in. But
June.
as you always say, one house sale does not determine the market in the area. Exactly. You're supposed to have equalization.
We look at everything. Yeah, that
Yeah, I
won't be
mean,
an
you're not
automatic.
going to reduce it because I bought one in the neighborhood without looking at the others. Right, Mr. Goodwillie? I saw him nodding his head.
Oh yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
No, that's
And-
right. We're not. That's not automatic. But if it's been on the market and they've got an appraisal, then that appraiser shouldn't have listed 3 comparable sales. And we're going to look at the report to make sure that it's a good
Yeah.
report. Yes, thanks for pointing that out. Because Scrivanti rule, it's illegal to chase a sale and put a property at one sale without looking at everything else. But if it's a fair sale, then we go ahead and make it. Other questions?
Questions or comments on the assessor's budget?
So what you plan on doing then is, this is gonna be a mad rush. And so
Hiring 3 more people with that 250,000.
3 more people with a 250, the new 250? That's all you're gonna get is 3 people? What else you buying?
Some cars and computers, and we have to have licenses for everything that we're doing.
Licenses?
Yeah.
Computer licenses?
For our software, for our different users, they charge us per seat.
Let me ask you a question. Is all your software through .com, or do you have a private vendor?
Yeah, we have private vendor.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a specialized.
Okay,
Yes.
now is that, does that private vendor own all the software?
They would own it.
Yeah, you license it,
we-
right?
Yeah, we license it, yeah.
So you have to pay, every year to keep
Betcha.
that license and
Sure
and
do.
for the number of users and everything else?
Yes, sir.
Is that budgeted in here somewhere? I guess that's okay, when you get to that point, we can talk about it, but remind me when you get there, I wanna know what the license is.
Barry,
The maintenance contract on the second page. Maintenance contract would contain RealWare, would contain Esri, would contain SPSS, would contain Apex, would contain all of the
The
software.
phone systems, everything. If you go past the
color page,
budget
salary
or the
page.
salary, all our maintenance contracts are listed
That's the-
here for 253,000 is what we put out for maintenance contracts, including RealWare and everything.
That's annually?
Yes, every year.
Yep. Now let me explain that, Commissioner.
Yeah.
When I started in the assessor's office, everything was by the number 2 pencil. We've gone to a computer software program that's Colorado Customware, and that Apex, as you come down, is our sketch program that ties into that. So we go out there and we make a digital sketch. And in Colorado, our system that we do our computer modeling with is the RealWare support for Colorado Customware. After the first couple of years, when an appraiser went to the field, they would make hard copies of all the property record cards. So if there are 600 houses in Boyle Edition, we printed out
600 copies, and we made pencil changes on there. If you went from a composition roof to a wood shake roof, we can make correction there. If you put an addition on there, we draw it, come back, and everybody do it. The next one is fieldware. What we did is we bought tablet computers. Now the appraiser downloads all 600 property records onto this tablet computer, goes out there, and he can click on it and just change it. That's one of the options for the roof. And he can go to the apex and put that addition on the sketch with his little stylus, and then come back when he's done with the addition, download it in.
You know, I'm not complaining about you using technology. I think
No.
that's great. I just am concerned that, you know, we aren't somehow using the technology that we're paying so dearly for. You know, that somehow we couldn't have had, and I'm not, as everybody in the world knows by now, I'm not a technology person. I mean, I had a hard time opening this pen. So, you know, I mean, I just, that's what concerns me is these spin-offs, and we find ourselves spending $250,000 with somebody else when we have this multi-million-dollar investment down the street. And I don't know the answer to it, but, you know, that's my concern. It's not your use of technology. You have to,
Yeah.
and you have to use more of it.
We do.
So,
Right.
Commissioner Rogers may have a comment here.
Does Sean Law operate off your contract, or do we have to buy two Ezra contracts with you guys?
It would be a separate.
Might be separate, but you know, we get money from the city and some grant money, so we might be paying for it, but we're not paying 100 cents on the dollar if he's using it.
Patrick.
The vehicles, I just had a question regarding the vehicles. How many vehicles do you have in there? And
Why isn't that going?
isn't that deviate? Does that deviate? Don't we normally buy those vehicles through the garage?
That's what I was going to ask you. Fleet
Yeah.
management.
And that's, if you want to do
That's
that,
part of the
Patrick,
fleet.
that helps us.
I mean, I think that's what should happen. If, in fact, county board wants to go in that direction, it should be taken out of your budget request and put into the garage budget request. That would be, just to be consistent with what we've done in the past,
I
because
got
they
no-
become a part of the pool.
It's fine with
And-
me. I mean, we just need the cars. I mean,
But then, and the cars are, who are the cars for?
appraisers.
Okay, and that, do they replace cars that are going out of service, or are you short cars?
Yeah,
or-
we're short cars.
So how many cars are you short right now?
I want to say the original plan of the 500,000, there was 7 cars.
I mean, how are you handling it right now, being short?
Right now, when we looked at 204,000 we spent on salary, we only spent 45,000 on equipment, and that was computer equipment. That was not any cars.
But my question is, who are driving the cars? Because obviously the appraisers that are driving around need to have those cars, no question about
Right
it.
now, we are doubling up.
Okay.
I've got staff going 2 to a car.
Okay, so that's really, I mean, it's easier for everybody to separate the two issues, because one is the money that you're arguing for this project, and the other is a pre-existing need for vehicles.
Correct.
Tell me something.
Okay.
2 people in a car, that would seem like it's kind of a waste, unless they're walking down each side of the street or something.
We start them out new. When they're training, they're working together training. Then as they become competent, one will go one side of the street, the other side of the street.
And why not use...
Preferably, it would be nice to have 1 car per individual.
And I've seen Mike Shalma or whatever make a great presentation to us, and probably Mr. Goodwill. They saw it at our county board meeting a week or 2 ago. Why wouldn't we use that more? The Google Earth thing to tell that, hey, I just had it on a room in the back of my house or whatever. I mean, I know it's not totally
Correct. We still
But
need
they
to get
keep
somebody on the
upgrading.
ground to see, what percent complete is it, what condition is the house. Especially in the older houses, the condition is huge, and we're not able to get that from the aerial photography.
Yeah, but the condition, you're not getting in the house.
Also, the aerial photography, they're looking at flying it once every 3 years. That was real good our first year, but after that, all the new construction additions, we're not gonna pick up unless we get out
And I
there.
respect what you do, you've done a good job there. But tell me this, I mean, all you're seeing when I'm out there is I'm seeing, oh, let's see, put on shutters, repainted his house. That's pretty minor stuff. I mean, I could paint a house for $3,000.
Probably the best example would be when the city condemned those 600 houses and they came out in the paper. We first thought those were all going to be condemned to be tore down, but until we actually went out and looked at them, and some of them are still good houses, they're going to get rehab. Some of them are completely gutted inside and pits. But the only way we're going to find those things out is boots on the ground.
And plus, we have a state mandate to physically check, to walk every house once every 6 years.
And how often do you do it now? Do you see
Well,
do you physically do?
If we get 28,000 inspections, we should be on track to complete it in 6 years.
6 years?
We are on our 4th year.
And that's close to what we've done.
But don't you change the assessments like every 3rd year or something? No?
State statute is every year. We look at all 213,000 properties. If you live in a neighborhood where the market's been flat and there hasn't been any change, and your neighborhood is at 96-97% assessment sale ratio, we're not going to change anything. We're going to go to those areas where they're too high or too low and concentrate there. But we've looked at your neighborhood, okay, and we just haven't changed any values there because there was no need.
All your people know that, hey, if I got to go to the grocery store, I don't drive the county car.
PJ, we've got a real good GPS system on it, live.
That's good.
And PJ,
I'm riding in the front seat with them.
That's what he tells them.
and there have been a couple people that didn't follow those rules back in the old days, and they're no longer with us.
Yeah, I know the real estate commission is really strict on their auditors going out. And of course, we have had some instances where a car has been driven early in the morning hours by someone that wasn't working.
I'll never do it again, PJ, I swear.
Glad that wasn't you, Patrick.
Further questions concerning the assessor's budget? Joe?
So I got a question. If you're going to do this new mandate and you're going to have these meetings, what are the implications for the Board of Equalization? Because you say, oh, they're going to come and talk to me as opposed to, so does that mean that the meetings with the Board of Equalization should go down?
Or does it mean if I don't get what I think is enough from the assessor's office, then I'll try another bite of the apple and go to the Board of Equalization? We got no track record on this.
Because, that's another, what is it, Marcos, $230,000 budget for the Board of Equalization. So, all of a sudden, are we paying for duplicative work?
Yeah. You would think after a track record of a couple of years or so, you'd be able to determine, yes, I would think intuitively that you can lower the Board of Equalization budget.
I think we all hope that. Okay. That's even the public, that's good for them. Yes, sir. Mr. Boyles.
So explain to me how we're going to handle this 250,000. That's what I'm not getting. If they're not getting it now, what are we going to do?
Whether they're requesting it now.
We're talking about that. We're not there yet.
It was 500,000. We gave them 250 last year, and now they're essentially because
so
it's
2% includes the 250.
No, it's not. 250 is on top of the 2%.
That's what I'm saying. That's my question. How are we going to handle 250?
We haven't decided that, have we?
So we got a question, Mr. Boyle?
Well, I have always been an opponent of the Board of Equalization. I think it's smoke and mirrors. I asked for an opinion from the county attorney's office several years ago about who's in charge of setting the valuations of real estate in Douglas County, and it's the county assessor. And so after we go through all this stuff, and we go through all these things, and now we hire all these referees, and we spend $500,000, $600,000, and do all this stuff, and then we get the report about 70 hours before we have to vote on it. And then also no one wants to change anything. This year I got the Crossroads Target store dropped by $3 million, and only because it was way out of whack. You know, they had I don't know, remember now, but they had I think a $15 million valuation, and they got it dropped down to $5 million, and then something else. It was really kind of crazy, but anyway, it jumped out at me. So I got it raised, and but we have like 70 hours to handle this, and what always happens, didn't happen this year for some reason. World Herald runs a story, you know, county board drops valuation by $725 million, you know. So we are the fools. We're the fools who are cutting valuations, you know. And guess what? No one, I'll guarantee you, no one of the commissioners had the opportunity to read all the valuations being cut. And because of the clerk's office, Kathleen Hall rearranges these so that I can see myself, and I share it with the other commissioners, the percentages of cuts, starting with, you know, a 90% cut, you know, how far down it went. So you can go in and look to see whose valuation was cut by 90%. And you can say, is that reasonable? Does that look right? And then you can start asking questions, and you've got about 65 hours and the clock's ticking. Well, then I start trying to get people coming in, the commercial people, and everybody starts saying, damn it, he's doing it again. You know, and I drag down your people, and then I can't. One year I got shut down by the county attorney. You can't do this to people because the property owner isn't there. You can't change the valuation because, well, last year I did that to Target and nobody complained. I don't know how. But I mean, it's a farce, total farce. And I think what we need to do is repeal the Board of Equalization. Let the assessor do his job. Let him set the values. And now it's beginning to shift right back where it belongs. Now he's going to be given the time that he needs to do it, so he isn't under the gun like, you know, 14 days to do this or whatever. That's outrageous. Let the assessor's office set the valuations. They're the skilled people. They know what they're doing. They're the real estate people. Let them do their job. Get the Board of Equalization the hell out of this. It just doesn't make any sense.
Although that, I mean, I'm not arguing with you, but that is a decision that the legislature
I know,
has
exactly.
to make.
I know, but that's what we ought to be doing. And now we're on the right track. Senator Campbell actually did something that makes some sense, although it's it's redundant, it duplicates things, and it doesn't work in Douglas County because of the volume. But now we're going to have all these folks who I know, I could name some of them, great Polish names from South Omaha, who complain every year. They call me, they do not like Mr. Morrissey. I tell them I love him, but anyway, the point of it all is I think we ought to be thinking about legislation that does shift the whole thing to the assessor's office. Let's get out of the way, save the money, and now it's really a farce because now we have all these, we don't even get involved in it, you know. And then the point is that we have like 70 hours to look at it. I feel like I'm in Congress. You know, I vote on things I haven't read. That's why I abstain now. I don't vote on it. I abstain. Okay. Sorry about the lecture.
Doug.
I have a question, a short comment. Mr. Morrissey, your postage costs going from 37,000 to 49,000. That's a pretty high jump. What's causing that?
It's for Valentine's.
On the last page of the handout.
Yeah, that depends on how many notices we mail out each year. And we mailing out more this year than we did in the past, so that changes, number one. Number two is, that's a good point, Doug, because we're moving towards technology on filing your forms, your personal property form now, instead of sending it out like we used to. Okay. You can go online and do it. Same thing with your exempt form. And then you know, we mail out the homestead applications for the elderly. Unfortunately, they don't have computers yet, but as the years go up, then I would expect that they would do that. The state statute says we make it available to them. I don't trust them to call us and say, I didn't get a homestead form.
So you're responsible for taking the initiative to mail those out.
Right. Well, we do that, because I think it's the right thing to do, especially with the elderly.
But in the future, computerization.
I think so.
And then I had a short comment. I think the reason the state legislature moved things back to the Board of Equalization because there's so much taxpayer dissatisfaction with the TERC. But I have a suggestion to make, and that is, I think the county has a way of making deficit appropriations, so if you didn't want to appropriate the whole $250,000 at once, couldn't you do that a staggered amount and see how much expense there was in January, starting in next January?
See that, then you're not giving us the money to gear up to have the people to do it next January. Last year, Doug, I came in and asked for 500,000, so we had people in place that were trained and had everything, ready to go. And the county board, I mean, we're all in tough budget time. Said, okay, we'll give you 250 this year and 250 next year. We're not gonna give it to you all at once. So they've taken that step to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I believe that was trying to phase this in as best as possible, but we can't wait to see the protests come in and then go hire staff to deal with it. I mean, we have to have the staff in place and up to speed before the protests arrive.
And what's the qualifications of staff? 225,000 for 3 people, 250. I mean, that's not.
Well, part of that's cars that
Yeah,
will back
part
out
of
of the
it.
budget, and then.
So why can't we start? We've got some seized vehicles. Do we use those?
No.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
those
the
can
seized
only be
vehicles are
used
only
for
used
the
for law
sheriff.
enforcement.
Law
purposes.
enforcement.
It can only be used for law enforcement
Yeah.
purposes.
I don't know if that's correct or not.
I think
Well,
so.
that's what we've always been told.
Yeah.
I was wrong on the last one, PJ, but I'm right on this one.
No, Patrick's right.
Well, you just say that because you like to be nice to Patrick. I thought some other people are driving those seized vehicles.
Not anybody outside of law enforcement.
No, they're all within the sheriff's office.
Okay, I stand to be corrected.
Only Annie does that, I thought.
Commissioner Boyle.
I have a question under the, it's probably a stretch, but under your budget on page 2, you've got geographical info system. It's cost center 501013. It's probably a stretch, but is there anything in here that Mike Shonlow's GIS, or is that not GIS, is that what it's called? GIS office could handle? I mean, could he be doing any of this?
They get their stuff from us,
Oh,
really,
the
as
other
far
way
as the
around?
property record
The other
stuff.
way around?
And the parcel file.
Yeah.
And state statute says that the assessor's office will keep computerized parcel real estate maps. Huh? Cadastral maps.
Is there any advantage going on leasing the vehicles? I mean, if we could find like Nebraska leasing or somebody that would lease us used vehicles, because a lot of new vehicles, they limit your miles and it's a buck a mile over. But if you're leasing some of the used vehicles,
there's no limit.
There's not a limit. They don't care like that. And I don't lease any cars from them. I might do my own. I lease cars to other people. But there's
We all go down
Ernie
to,
Frio, Nebraska Leasing, leases. You know, he has cars coming in, so he just soon leases.
Who's
I
this?
got just citizens. Ernie Frio, Nebraska Leasing. But I'll lease out a vehicle. I have Chevy Cruises I've leased out to other people. I'd love to be releasing. I'm not going to do it with the county. But I'm just saying, if there's some market out there, instead of leasing new vehicles,
you ought to go to American Auto on 16th Street.
anyone.
I'm going to talk to purchasing and
Beautiful
see what we
dimpled
can.
cars.
You see about that,
Beautiful
just
dimples.
to check.
How big is
and
your
mention
fleet,
that
Roger?
name,
Sunny
Ernie
Group.
Frio, or call me if you need to do it.
What's the name?
Nebraska Leasing.
Some
Ernie
little
Frio.
teams, some little dimples.
You know, you could go out and get a bid and go into a fleet management program. If you got 18 cars, eventually stagger it so you do like 6 cars a year. And that's starting to be the scale that some of the banks would look at it. And, you know, the bank leasing companies, rather than Mike's friend on the corner. And, you know, you could put in a leasing program and lease the car that way.
Well, we'll look at it through purchasing. We won't put it on them to do that. We'll look at it.
Yeah, all they do is say we need cars, and it's up to us to.
That's right.
But purchasing.
We don't care if it's a Ford or a Chevy.
It's purchasing's call as to what car you're going to get.
Do any of your people have cell phones?
not paid for by the county.
Great. Very good. Doug, Marty, you guys always are helping us to figure out how to have a budget without a tax increase. Okay, I'm thankful you're here and have been here. You call us every week. What do you see? I mean, it becomes a difficult catch-22 for the county to try to keep saying, okay, we'll just keep reducing budgets. We don't have other revenue sources. What do you do to meet the obligation without having, at some point, a mill levy increase? Do you say to Roger, hey, we're not funding the 250, sorry, figure it out.
Just have to be innovative. We're working.
Well, give us some motivation. We're running out of time.
We will have a letter, Jeff Stevens, who's the engineer, Harvey, who's the CPA, myself, across the county. There's about 5 of us working on a letter to the matrix that will give data and information what we think things should happen. Something that you can easily read.
Good.
Is there anything else for the assessor at this point? Any other questions or comments regarding the assessor's budget? If not,
Thank you.
I think
Thanks, Michael.
we stand adjourned. Thank you all.